Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm Glenn Martin. I'm here with my co-host, James Haskell. And in this episode, we are completing our trip around the AFC North, ranking each position group. And this won't be a position group we're ranking. We're ranking the coaching staff for each of the four teams in the AFC North. And we're going to rank them 1 through 4. So, Jimmy, let us know the parameters and let us know who your fourth-ranked coaching staff is in the North.
So the parameters, I guess I would say, are overall success. I think that the group as a whole, so essentially the three coaches that we're grading, of course, the head coach, offensive coordinator, and defensive coordinator. We're not really going any further than that, but those three are like cumulative grade of each team based on those three coaches is how we're ranking them. And people might, I might already start out in the doghouse here. Actually, not in the doghouse. Not putting the Browns at number 4. While I'm not the biggest fan of Stefanski, I absolutely think that Zach Taylor is a dumpster fire. And I think his staff is lacking in experience. I think that he would have been a lot smarter to surround himself with in an O coordinator or D coordinator position with a former head coach, similar to what, they plucked Zach Taylor off of that Rams coaching staff 2 years ago because he was under McVay's tree, right? But McVay had the oldest coach, if I'm not mistaken, the oldest coach in the league on his staff in Wade Phillips.
Yeah.
Coach, been around the league for a long, and they're a perfect fit. And they had success together. So I think that Zach Taylor would have been beneficial to do that, but he didn't. I mean, he picked up Lou Anarumo as the D coordinator, who's been in the league for 8 years. He's been around the way and had some success with the Giants and things. But once again, no former head coaching experience. And then Brian Callahan, who reminds me a lot of Zach Taylor, who has the credit for Derek Carr's big breakout, his career high in passing yards and passer rating. And so I don't know if I have, I do know. I have no faith in their staff because I think that they lack experience. I think that he needs another guy that's a head coach there, that's been there, and he might in another position that I'm not necessarily recognizing. But I think you need a guy. That's your three. That's your presidency, if you will, right? Yeah. And when they sit around the round table, it'd be nice to have another guy that's been there, done that. My opinion. So for that, I'm putting them fourth. On my list. I'm not a believer in Zach Taylor, just not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's fair. I have them fourth on my list as well. I think you're right. They got him because of the McVay link, and everyone at that time was searching for the next McVay because he's coming off that successful season, leading them to the Super Bowl, and everyone wanted a piece of that new, young offensive genius, and that's why they got Zach Taylor. And I guess the book is – we don't know how he's going to end up being as a head coach. I think last year he was kind of – last year nobody was expecting them to go to the playoffs. It was an obvious rebuilding year. And so I guess we'll wait and see. But you mentioned now they don't have a veteran, guy with head coaching experience on the roster. And I certainly see your point because we've seen in Baltimore Harbaugh bringing a few of those guys, especially early on, but really throughout. But I'll say this also, if you have a guy who's been a head coach and he's a member of your staff, that's also a guy that the owner can appoint as an interim when he decides to fire you in week 10. And if you don't have a guy with head coach experience, maybe that makes the owner a little less likely to fire you mid-season, and you can keep on the job until the offseason. Maybe that's the only bright spot of not having a guy with experience. But I doubt that the Bengals will be doing that anyway because their owner historically is not going to be firing a coach while he's still under contract because he is cheap and does not want to pay two coaches at the same time to do one job. So I don't think he had to worry about that. But I agree with you. I think they have to be fourth because of the relative lack of experience in comparison to the rest, and also lack of success because they were 2-14 last year. So I don't know how anyone could put them higher than fourth, despite the fact that the Browns have a entirely new coaching staff and also a rookie head coach.
Right, and I'll tell you what, for I'm using the same logic for fourth and third. It was hard for me, to be honest, because the same logic that I broke down for number 4 absolutely applies to number 3 for the most part. Where Stefanski, I'm not a big believer in overall. I think that people, they've raved about his football IQ, about the Vikings going 10-6. Last year was his first full season as an offensive coordinator, and he had Gary Kubiak whispering in his ear. I think that without Diggs and without Stefanski, it doesn't matter. I think that the Vikings offense is going to be the best it's been under Kirk Cousins because Kubiak is now willing to take hold of the reins on the offense and run it himself. And so that's just my opinion. But aside from the Vikings, I think that the only difference in this offense for me in this coaching staff, I like Joe Woods as a defensive coordinator. I think it's hilarious because for any of you guys that want to do this, we learned about some of these coaches, based on our experiences and stuff like that. But of course, we wanted to read up on them and things. If you go onto each team's website, they have like profiles about the coaches and stuff like that, and you learn a little bit more about them. The offensive coordinator of the Browns is the only coach I found with no profile, Alex Van Pelt. And I think it's hilarious. Like, we found other stuff about him, but on their site, he has nothing under his profile because Stefanski is the offensive coordinator. Like, Alex Van Pelt, I'm sorry, but you're kind of getting you're just there to consult, right? Like, you're a consultant. But Joe Woods has been around and as a D coordinator, been in some really good defenses. He's been around for a long time. I mean, he was with the Bucs, then with the Vikings for 5 years. With the Raiders, and then, of course, in the no-fly zone from 2015 to 2018 with the Broncos as a defensive backs coordinator when those defensive backs were balling. I mean,
Chris Harris, Talib, yeah.
My gosh, those guys were balling out. So, and then, of course, went to San Francisco, and now he's at the D coordinator spot at the Browns. So I give them a slight upgrade from the Bengals. Not much, but I give them a slight upgrade because I think Joe Woods is the best coordinator of those 4. The 4 coordinators, the 2 from the Browns and the 2 from the Bengals. I think he's the best one. Anyway, so that's my number 3. We'll see what Stefanski can do. What about you? Do you agree with me? Or
I tell you what, you made a heck of an – I have to agree with you. I actually had some numbers pulled up in front of me because, I mean, that last season that Joe Woods was in Denver, and he was the coordinator for the Broncos. They were very good. I mean, they didn't have a good offense, so their record they only went 5-11, but they were very successful as a defense. So, you mentioned my point exactly that he's the reason that they're third because we just don't. I kind of am on your camp. I think Gary Kubiak is one of the best play callers that the league has. And outside of his health concerns, I think he would have probably been calling plays sooner, and he'd probably be a head coach right now if he didn't have those migraine issues that he was having. That really seemed – I couldn't imagine having daily migraines. So and I know that they're brought on by stress, and the NFL is a very stressful place, and coaching is a very stressful job. So I think that as an upgrade for them offensively, I agree. Over Stefanski by having Kubiak call the plays. As good as Stefanski was for the Vikings, to me, he overused Cook at the beginning of the year. It was unbelievable how much they used him when you have all that talent on the outside and a guy like Kirk Cousins you just gave a boatload of money to. But anyway, moving on from that. But, I have to agree. I think that it's kind of a wait and see on the offense. But, man, there's a lot of talent. So, they might be I don't know if they're going to climb these rankings, but they might be climbing the NFL rankings and coordinators if they can put that talent together on offense with Stefanski, because I think the defense will be just fine under Joe Woods.
All right, we'll keep it going, Glenn. I'm going to let you stick your neck out there first and give us your number 2.
Okay. All right. I'm not scared. Number 2 is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Pittsburgh fans, did you hear that?
Huh?
Said Pittsburgh fans, did you hear that? He put freaking Mike Tomlin behind John Harbaugh. Are you okay with that?
Well, look, I mean, they're both extremely, extremely successful at their jobs. But they both have one Super Bowl win. Tomlin does have the edge in appearances. He lost the Super Bowl, but then Harbaugh has the edge in overall playoff success. He has 2 more wins and the same amount of losses. Tomlin is 8-7 in the playoffs, and John is 10-7. But really, to me, I mean, they both have. You can't get mad at the coordinators when you look at certainly the defensive side of the ball with Butler. Butler for was it Keith? I think it's Keith. Yeah, Keith Butler for the Steelers has been good. I mean, he's there. I think this is his 5th season as the coordinator for the Steelers, and they're really talented. But I don't know if he's better than our defensive coordinator in Wink, because Wink to me is he's revolutionary in the amount that he's going to blitz and also the amount that the way he can he molds his game plan around his personnel. A lot of times I see coaches, they want to kind of shoehorn players into their system. But what makes Wink so great is the fact that he molds his system around his personnel, around his talent. So he looked at last season and looked and saw, well, we're strong on the back end. We got great coverage, but we're weak at pass rush. So what are we going to do? We're going to blitz more than any team ever. I mean, not even close. I mean, they sent everyone. It was so much further ahead than everyone as far as blitz rate. And what that turned into was a damn good defense. And they what I love about Wink is he always goes to his strength of his personnel. And I think that I just love that about him. And then when you look on the offensive side of the ball, and I guess I'm arguing why I have the Ravens 1 and the Steelers 2. I don't know if it gets any better than Greg Roman. The guy's got all the experience you could want. He's coming off a season where he led us to his historical rushing totals and by far the number 1 offense in the league. He's got the reigning MVP leading that offense. So it's really hard to argue anyone is a better coordinator in the North than Greg Roman. He's the top of the food chain. He's a guy that was getting head coach. Him and Wink were getting head coach interviews around the league last offseason. So I don't think there's any doubt that he's the number 1 coordinator, offensive or defensive, maybe in the league, but certainly in the North, judging by just the success of last season. So I give the Ravens a slight edge because of all those 3 guys. All those 3, I think we have the best coaching staff maybe in the league. Now, you might give Andy and Bill Belichick the edge over Harbaugh, but accumulative, I don't think it's better than here in Baltimore. So I got to go Ravens 1 and Steelers 2.
Yeah, that's funny. So I let you stick your neck out there first, but I have the exact same rankings, and I know that you guys are going to hit us up and say that we're homers, and that's fine. But I will say this. Mike Tomlin, if John Harbaugh was not our coach and I could pick any coach in the NFL, I realize Belichick is out there. I realize Andy Reid is out there. I want Mike Tomlin because I love his style. I love his leadership. I love how he can unify a locker room and gets – I don't think there's anyone better at getting the most out of the cumulative team. However, I do think that he struggles in split-second strategy decisions. And I think the reason that is because the staff around you really matters when you're making those last, those split-second decisions. So this is why I give John Harbaugh the edge, because I think that John Harbaugh is the best coaching recruiter in the league. You talked about how we have the best, potentially, not arguably, we have the best offensive coordinator in the NFL. I mean, I think that that's safe to say. And arguably the best DC in the NFL. And cumulatively, we have the best staff. I think that has everything to do with people rave about working for John Harbaugh. When I mean by people, I mean coordinators. They talk about it all the time. That is so important. That is so crucially important. Why would you work for a guy you don't want to work for, number one? And because think about it. They're going to go in and say, I don't want a guy that's going to hold me back. I don't want a guy that's going to hide me. I don't want a guy that's not going to let me go for a head coaching position. John Harbaugh leads those discussions and concerns perfectly. Nobody does it better than John. I think he's the best recruiter of coordinators in the NFL, therefore making him making the split-second decisions easier, making his life easier during game day, and making the Ravens a better team. So I just think he's an excellent leader of men. That's why I think he's a better coach than his brother. And that's why I think he does better than his brother in the NFL, because it's different than a dictatorship in college than being a leader of men, right? Because with men, you have to get them to buy in. You can't prod them like you can in college, right?
Yeah, men that make more money than you.
Absolutely. So, I mean, Tomlin is the only thing I love about the Steelers. Love Mike Tomlin. Love everything he stands for. Love the toughness and all those things. But I don't think he's as good of a recruiter of coaching staff talent as John Harbaugh. So to me, a lot of things about them are equal. But to me, at the end of the day, that's a huge difference. So I think John Harbaugh is securely in that spot for me at number 1, and the Steelers are number 2. So we have we have the Ravens number 1 coaching staff, the Steelers number 2. Number 3, we have the Browns, and number 4, we have the Bengals. Do you have any rebuts to my statements?
No, and I mean, maybe a follow-up is what I love about those two guys is some people say, well, Harbaugh and Tomlin don't have expertise on either side of the ball. They're not former offensive or defensive coaches that call the plays themselves. To me, that's a plus. I mean, people argue that like it's a negative. To me, I love that neither. I love that about both of them because they let the guys who do that best do their job. They empower their coaches to do their job. And what it does is it takes pressure off them and it allows them to be a head coach on game day who's not worried about calling plays. You mentioned Sean McVay hiring Wade Phillips as his D coordinator and being the oldest coordinator in football. Yeah, because McVay is an offensive guy, and he said, look, I'm going to give you the keys to my defense, Wade Phillips. I don't want to worry about defense because I'm an offensive guy. So let me get a guy who is a former head coach and one of the best defensive coordinators the league has seen and just give him the keys and just say, here, it's all yours. And that's what I like about Harbaugh. That way on game day, he's free to make those decisions, those big time, timeouts, challenges, any type of strategy decisions that a head coach faces because he's not burdened with preparing for the next offensive sequence or the next defensive drive. I mean, he's unburdened by that, and so is Tomlin, and I like that. And I feel like the biggest thing with being a head coach in the league, you mentioned, is being a great leader, being a great motivator. You have to get all these guys to be on the same page, to work towards the same goal, and you have to be a great leader of men. You just have to be. And we've seen countless times where they kind of peel the curtain back, and we see a head coach and we see them kind of in their element, and you can notice the differences of the great motivators, the great leaders. And there's no doubt to me that Harbaugh and Tomlin are great leaders. Now, I'll say this. I may give Harbaugh the slight edge because we have seen some turmoil in the locker room out of Pittsburgh. Now, maybe they got rid of most of that, and they probably did with getting rid of Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. But we did see some turmoil over the last couple of years in those locker rooms. Now, granted, that wasn't last year. Last year they had more injury troubles than locker room. But yeah, so I have to give. I like both the coaches. I'm with you. I like Tomlin. I like Harbaugh, and I like the fact that they are unburdened with play calling responsibilities, and they're free to be the head coaches that they are.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I love that as well. So we want to get your guys' thoughts. I'm pretty sure that all of you AFC North fans out there, whether you're Bengals, Cleveland, Pittsburgh Steelers, or Ravens fan, pretty sure we're going to get some interesting comments. We want to know what your guys' opinions are. Rank them out for us. Let us know if we're right, if we're wrong. Give us your take. Make sure to subscribe at the end of this video, or subscribe right now. There's going to be a button somewhere around our heads. So click on the button and subscribe to the channel. So that way we can keep putting these videos out and giving you guys this insight. And we'll talk to you guys soon.
See you.